Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a 10-team PPR mock draft from the 3rd overall spot on FantasyPro's Draft Wizard. Now, we have done a bunch of 12-team mock drafts already, so I figured that we'll do a 10-team mock draft in today's video because, in my opinion, the draft strategy is wildly different from a 10-team league to a 12-team league. The roster positions for today's draft are 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, flex, kicker, defense, and 6 bench spots. Normally, we do just 2 wide receivers, but in a 10-team league, since a lot of the teams are just going to be stacked, I feel like adding that extra wide receiver or that extra flex spot makes the league a lot more competitive. So again, a 10-team PPR mock draft from the 3rd overall spot. If you guys do end up enjoying today's video, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you do hit a like on today's video. It helps me out a ton. And if you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into this 10-team PPR mock draft from the 3rd overall spot. Again, we are using FantasyPro's Draft Wizard. As we get later into the offseason, we will be doing mock drafts on ESPN, Yahoo, NFL, those fantasy football platforms. But for right now, to kind of save a hassle, we are going to be drafting up against the computer. So the draft begins with Justin Jefferson, followed by Jamar Chase. I think that is going to be a very normal start to drafts this fantasy football season. It really does feel like in best ball, wide receivers are king in the 1st round, but even in these redraft mock drafts, it feels like the computers and people just normally casually playing fantasy football are more on the wide receiver position in the 1st round this year. Now, there's still a chance that in your league, you are drafting with people that are really more casual players and they just want to get those running backs early. So I'm not saying that it's a mortal lock of the century that a bunch of wide receivers are going to go in the 1st round, but I think that is going to continue to become the normal until the pendulum shifts again and maybe some of these early round wide receivers bust and the running backs go crazy, and then people end up shifting back to the running back position. We kind of see it every year. Something happens, people change their strategy, you gotta zig when people zag. That's just kind of my opinion on things. So the draft begins, again, 2 wide receivers off the rip. So we're just going to go with the best running back available. We're going to go with Christian McCaffrey. Now, if you wanted to say, I like Eckler better than McCaffrey, I like Bijan Robinson better than McCaffrey, then go right ahead. I'm not going to have too much of an argument with you. Obviously, there are some people worried about the workload when it comes to Christian McCaffrey, but the only time San Francisco really reduced his workload was when they're beating the dog piss out of teams, and even in those games when they're destroying the team, it's because Christian McCaffrey already has a bunch of fantasy points, so I'm not really worried about McCaffrey at all going into the season. Sure, he's getting a little bit older, but he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. He has elite pass catching upside. He's the perfect pick, in my opinion, at the 103. Had he not have been available, I probably would have went with either Cooper Kupp or Tyreek Hill. After McCaffrey, we see Austin Eckler, followed by Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. The 2nd round opens with Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, Travis Kelce, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, and Ramondre Stevenson. Now, in 10-team leagues, I really believe that the quarterback and tight end position is much more important. Now, in a normal 12-team league, I think you can get away with having not the best tight end. I think you can get away with kind of maybe streaming quarterbacks every week or having just a pretty average quarterback. But in a 10-team league where a lot of teams are incredibly stacked because there's only 10 teams in the league, I think having that elite tight end, having that top end quarterback is very important. And that's why I'm kind of shocked that Kelce fell to the 204. If I was back here at the 108, 109, 110, I definitely would consider pulling the trigger on Travis Kelce. And I think the quarterback and tight end argument for getting these elite guys is even more important in 8-team leagues because, in 10-team leagues, a lot of the teams are stacked. In 8-team leagues, these are basically fucking super all-star teams fighting against each other. So you need that edge, and you can get that at the quarterback and the tight end position, especially with a guy like Kelce, who is just miles above the rest. Now, again, I like Mark Andrews. I like Hawkinson. I like these other tight ends. Andrews, Hawkinson, Kittle, got it, right? They all have this upside. But at the end of the day, Kelce is just the cream of the crop, where you could argue, like, if you don't get Mahomes, I'm still pretty happy with Fields or Jackson or Burrow, right? Like, I'm not pissed off at that, but Kelsey is just by far and away the best tight end in fantasy football, in my opinion. So we're back up on the board. We went McCaffrey with our first pick here at pick number 3. So now we're just going to go with best player available. I think Breece Hall is going to have a pretty solid season. I think he kind of starts a little bit slow, though, due to the fact that he's coming off the injury. I don't think it really impacts him in the long run, but I'm just not considering the running backs here. Hall, Etienne, Harris, sure, they're fine third-round picks or late seconds in a 12-team league, but in a 10-team league, I would rather just get the best player available. CeeDee Lamb, Adams, St. Brown. I have Adams ranked the highest. I think we went with Adams in our last mock draft, so we'll go CeeDee Lamb this time. I think kind of diversifying your teams is very important. You don't want to kind of go into the offseason if you play in, or go into the regular season with 10 fantasy teams, and say you get Devontae Adams in 8 of those teams. If Devontae Adams gets hurt, he was such a high pick for your fantasy team or your fantasy teams, that he could sink the ship of a bunch of your teams. Whereas if you draft, say, maybe you want Adams in 5, Lamb in 5, it's not going to look as bad. Obviously, it hurts if either of them get hurt, but that's just kind of how I think about things. So I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb at this spot at the 208. Again, I do have Devontae Adams ranked higher, but I think that you could kind of think of those guys as interchangeable. Even though I have Adams ranked a tier ahead of CeeDee Lamb, it is pretty close for me. So after CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, Amon, Ross St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, and Jalen Waddle. The first 2 teams here going with the heavy wide receiver strategy, 0 running back so far. Now, I won't say that this is a 0 running back strategy yet, because I feel like you have to actually see the draft through a little bit more before you can call it that, because there are still a chance that, hey, in the 4th round, 5th round, they just draft running backs, whereas I feel like you need to wait a little bit longer to call it a true 0 running back strategy. So we got that great running back, McCaffrey. We got a receiver that has top 3 upside. Now, the question is, do we want to be the first team to draft a quarterback because we could get Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, whoever your pick of the litter is at quarterback? Or do we just want to kind of take that next best tight end? Now, again, I do think Kelsey is significantly better than Andrews, but I think with Lamar Jackson being back, hopefully Lamar can stay healthy. Wouldn't shock me if Andrews was the tight end number 2 and just a little bit behind Kelsey, even though I do like Kelsey better. It sucks because Kelsey went at the 204, so I don't feel like I'm getting a large discount on Andrews in the 3rd. But again, I do feel like the tight end position is a little bit more important in these 10-team leagues because a lot of the teams are going to look stacked. So we are going to go with Mark Andrews here. I don't think Hawkinson would have fallen back to me, and I definitely don't think Mark Andrews would have fallen back to me. So I don't think this is necessarily going to kind of cripple our fucking team somehow. So I think we're going to be just fine. So after Mark Andrews, Kenneth Walker the 3rd, Jalen Hurts, Pat Mahomes, Travis Etienne, Breece Hall, Najee Harris, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, T.J. Hawkinson, Chris Olave, Aaron Jones, DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel, and Chris Godwin. Again, I will continue to kind of hate where Kenneth Walker is going in fantasy drafts. There are going to be people that say he's just so good, he's going to keep his role, and I'm not even going to argue with that thought process, right? I think it's pretty easy to see a path where Walker's the number 1 running back on Seattle. But I think saying that he's going to have that same role is a little bit crazy because they drafted Zach Charbonnet in the 2nd round. It wasn't like they drafted him in like the 5th round, right? It wasn't like something like that. These are 2 second-round running backs going toe-to-toe. Another pick pretty interesting, Chris Godwin. I think I like Chris Godwin more than most because even though Tom Brady didn't play that well last year, and even though that Bucs offense was pretty limp dick, in my opinion, I know they kind of crawled their way into the playoffs, but they weren't the best. I still think Chris Godwin could be good even with Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask under center. Obviously, that's not an ideal situation to be in, but think it could be a lot worse. If Josh Allen fell to me here, I think that would pretty much be an insta-click. And even in the 4th round, I'd be fine drafting Lamar or Justin Fields. I think the quarterbacks are going to go a lot higher in fantasy football this year compared to years past. And I think especially in a 10-team league, again, I've talked up the importance of the quarterback in the tight end position. So I made it clear that I want that quarterback. I want that tight end. Now, if Burrow, Fields, all these guys are gone, I'm not magically taking Justin Herbert the pervert or Trevor Lawrence in the 4th to 5th round, but when I see the value, I'm going to go ahead and pounce on it. Same thing with Mark Andrews, right? If Mark Andrews wasn't available here at the 303 and Hawkinson was, I'm not just magically taking Hawkinson multiple picks ahead of where I think he should be going and where I feel comfortable drafting him. Again, I get the Hawkinson hype train. I get the Minnesota Vikings passing offense looked incredible last season, right? It was beautiful. Magnifique, chef's kiss. I just don't necessarily feel like he's worth a third-round pick, if I'm being honest with you, and I think most of you guys would probably agree with that. So now we got our elite quarterback, we got our elite tight end, so guess what? Now we don't have to draft a backup quarterback, a backup tight end. Sure, when week 13 comes around, of course, we're going to need to go ahead and pick someone up off the waiver wire, but I'm not worrying about kind of just burning 2 roster spots on a tight end or a quarterback when I have such elite players at that position. I like Dameon Pierce, but I feel like I should probably just go with the wide receiver position here. But the question is, how long can we wait on running back in this kind of a draft? Because in these redraft leagues, not in best ball, I do a bunch of underdog drafts. You know, you might be able to get Pierce in the 6th round. That's not happening in redraft. I'm not going to be able to pass on Dalvin Cook, Pierce, Dobbins, and just assume one of them comes back. Now, sure, could I get Swift? Could I get Javonte? Sure, but I feel significantly better about a guy like Dameon Pierce than I do about DeAndre Swift. So I'm just going to go with Dameon Pierce here. Might be considered a little bit of a reach. His ECR, expert consensus ranking, is 41, ADP of 65. I'm still going to be fine taking him here at pick 43 overall. I know it might be considered a reach to some. I know the Houston Texans kind of have that gross narrative around him because they're the Texans, and they haven't been great like my whole fucking life ever since they've been in the NFL. The Texans have been a bottom feeder, laughable franchise that you could just laugh at. But at the end of the day, I feel confident in Dameon Pierce, and now I feel good, right? I got McCaffrey, I got Dameon Pierce. I don't have to worry about running back now. Sure, obviously injuries could happen. They could completely sink the ship of my team, Titanic style, but I'm fine waiting and going ahead and getting those wide receivers before jumping back in the running back position, unless, of course, I see someone that is just falling in ADP that I need to grab. So after Josh Allen, Lamar, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amari Cooper, Joe Mixon, I go Dameon Pierce. After that, we see Keenan Allen, J.K. Dobbins, just kidding, Miles Sanders, DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Moore, Wiki, Michael Pittman Jr., Dalvin Cook, Joe Shiesty, Drake London, George Kittle, Tyler Lockett, Calvin Ridley, Christian Watson, Dallas Goedert. Now, I get why people like Tyler Lockett. I get that he's still, in most head, the wide receiver 2 on the Seahawks. And I get it in best ball. There's those spike weeks, right? You don't have to worry about Lockett putting up a fucking goose egg in your line when JSN and GK Metcalf have a great game. But in redraft, in the 6th round, why are you doing that to yourself? Because you know, at least I feel like I know, that maybe not instantly. Maybe he starts off hot, but I think at some point, JSN is going to make his presence known in this offense. Now, thinking back to what happened on our team, if I could go back, which obviously you can in these things, but you know, we're acting like this is a real fucking draft. You can't go back. I would have rather waited until the 6th round and got Justin Fields over drafting Josh Allen where I drafted him. Now, I'm not saying Josh Allen was a bad pick. I just didn't think that Justin Fields would fall this far, but I guess that's just kind of my perception from all these best ball drafts where Justin Fields is a really hot commodity. I like Fields even better than Lamar Jackson, but that's for another video that's coming up very, very soon. So looking at the board here, we're just going to be drafting wide receivers. No need to look running back. I do like James Conner a decent amount, but no need to draft him. We already got McCaffrey and Dameon Pierce. We got 2 more receiver spots to fill and a flex, which will probably be a wide receiver as well. So McLaurin, Judy, Johnson, Mike Williams, Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk, Hollywood Brown. A lot of people seemingly loving Hollywood Brown now that DeAndre Hopkins is no longer a Cardinal. I'm going to keep it a buck with you, though. Colt McCoy being the starting quarterback scares me a lot. I like Marquise Brown's, Hollywood Brown's skill in the speed department. I like that he has those big spike game opportunities. But look, if Kyler Murray doesn't play until like week 8, they could, I've talked about this a lot, like he might not fucking play at all because they get to week 8 and they have 2 wins or 1 win and they just bench him. So McLaurin is going to be my pick here very clearly. I've started to see a bit of the buzz around Jerry Jeudy, and I get it. Great prospect. His stats towards the end of last season started to look good. He put up 900 yards, almost 1,000 yards. He gets the targets. Sean Payton's coming in. But at the end of the day, I still think Sutton's good. Like, I think that Sutton, you could argue, might even be better than Jerry Jeudy. So I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable taking Jeudy. And it's also a very big possibility that Russell Wilson is genuinely just washed. So we're going to go with Terry McLaurin here. I know the quarterback situation isn't the best, but McLaurin's the clear wide receiver 1 on the Commanders. And McLaurin has put up great years even with garbage players at the quarterback position. I mean, they just have a list of literal dog shit at the quarterback position from McLaurin's whole career. Every quarterback has been bad, basically. After Terry McLaurin, Jerry Jeudy, Justin Fields, Kyle Pitts, DeAndre Swift, I like Kyle Pitts in the 7th round in a 10-team league. I would be happy to pay that price. But I really feel like people are going to continue to talk themselves back and back and back into Kyle Pitts, whereas ADP moves to be too high. I get this generational prospect, this, that, and the other thing. The Falcons' offense going to be better, blah, blah, blah. Sure. But can you trust a guy where for years in a row, you've drafted this guy and he has absolutely bent you over a table? There hasn't been a year yet where you drafted him at ADP and was like, wow, that was a great selection, right? Now, again, I'm not saying he doesn't have the skill. I just am a bit of a scaredy cat, a bit of a pussy when it comes to drafting Kyle Pitts, if I'm being completely honest with you. Again, sure, I like Connor. I even get Akers at ADP. I get Rachaad White. But right now, I don't want running back. I got my running backs that I'm confident in. I'm going wide receiver. Yet again, Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk, Hollywood Brown, best available, Mike Evans, Pickens, Dotson. I have kind of started to panic on Mike Williams. I'm not in full panic mode to where I wouldn't draft him in the 7th round. But what I kind of want to say here, maybe they even have it here, restructured his contract. The guy's hurt, and it seems like that injury might be a little bit more serious than I previously thought. Now, I think he's going to be good to go for week 1. I think he's going to be fine. But with how injured Mike Williams continues to get like every year, now again, I'm not a doctor. I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, but he misses games. He hasn't missed like a crazy amount of games. Missed a couple games last year. The way he kind of moves his body, he like contorts himself into danger because he wants to make every play. It doesn't matter if he's not going to catch it. Doesn't matter if the ball's going fucking out of bounds. This guy's going to dive, do a 360 like he's in fucking FaZe Clan and try to grab the ball and just hurt himself. He does it all the time. Now, again, I'm not saying he's going to get injured, but I am worried about that injury, and I really like Deontay Johnson this year. There was such negative touchdown regression. 6, 7, 8 touchdowns in his first 3 years. Last year, 0, but the motherfucker had 147 targets. How do you get 147 targets and not get a single touchdown? I know. Nick, he burned me last year. He scored 0 touchdowns, blah, blah, blah. Now just fairy dust. Poof. Out of your brain. It's a wazzy, it's a woozy, like the Wolf of Wall Street and your Matthew McConaughey, okay? Just take it out of your brain. Don't think about it. Sure. Don't think about the touchdowns. Think about the yards per reception being above 10. Think about the targets, even with George Pickens, going to be very high. This is a team that wants to funnel the ball to Deontay Johnson. Even when Pickett was the quarterback, that was still the case as it was when it was Kizin Tittage Trubisky, just like with Big Ben Roethlisberger. I'm not a big fan of Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett is not terrible. He's not awful. He can throw the ball to Deontay Johnson, and I think people are taking a big nap on Deontay Johnson, and I think those players are going to be taking the big dirt nap at the end of the season when they slept on an excellent player that goes super late in drafts. That has huge upside every game because of the amount of targets he sees game in and game out. After Deontay Johnson, we see Mike Dubb, Cam Akers, Isaiah Pacheco, Brandon Ayuk, Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, Pat Freiermuth, Hollywood Brown, Justin Herbert the Pervert, Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, JSN, Kadarius Toney, and Dickie Dak Prescott. If you guys have ended up enjoying the video thus far, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. I get the hype with Kadarius Toney. Oh my God, he might be the wide receiver 1 in Kansas City, and you can get him in the 8th round, the 7th round. Oh my God. Sure, I get it, but that guy can't stay healthy worth shit. I haven't seen anything out of him that tells me that this is a elite wide receiver in the NFL. Haven't seen it. And I think the team might get not Kadarius Toney. They might get DeAndre Hopkins. Might as well just hand them the fucking Lombardi if that's the case, though. So we still don't have a flex. Again, we don't need another quarterback. We don't need another tight end. So we're probably just going to draft best player available. Now we are at a spot here where I like Jahan Dotson a ton. I've talked about him in videos. I've talked about him in mock drafts. I like him. I know Sam Howell isn't the best, but Jahan Dotson really looked good last year. I don't think he's going to be able to eclipse Terry McLaurin, but he looks good. Problem, we have McLaurin. So in a 10-team league, do I really want to put 2 of my players that are going to be in my lineup a ton on the same team, on a team that isn't the best, with a unsure quarterback position? No. Pickens. I don't like Pickens as much as most people, but I see it. I get it with George Pickens. Problem comes, I have Deontay Johnson, so I don't want Pickens. Burks, I like him a decent amount on Tennessee. I think that even if Tannehill's the quarterback all year, like things should be better for Burks. If I'm going receiver, though, I'm going Jordan Addison. I want a bad bitch, Jordan Addison Ray. Wide receiver, number 2 of the Minnesota Vikings. Adam Thielen was gobbling in targets, and now Addison's in that position. But now we kind of have to weigh that decision on Jordan Addison with the running backs available. Do I believe that Jordan Addison is a big step up over a guy like James Conner, or do I feel like I can get some solid wide receiver value later, and I would rather just get that third running back, lock up my running back core, McCaffrey, Pierce, and James Conner? I think I am going to go with James Conner and hope that Addison falls, because I think Addison, even on ESPN, Yahoo, these other platforms, just isn't ranked high enough, in my opinion, with that upside. So we're going to go with James Conner here and hope that Addison falls. But, of course, he goes the next pick, right? Because that's just how the cookie fucking crumbles, right? James Conner, Jordan Addison, David Montgomery, Rashad White, and George Pickens. Again, while I didn't really talk necessarily the highest on Burks, I feel like I made a good decision, right? Like Javonte Williams, I'm starting to kind of worry about now. It seems like he's going to be good to go. But there's a lot of talk about Samaje Perine role, and not enough to necessarily scare me full fade off Javonte Williams, but I definitely feel miles more confident in James Conner compared to Javonte Williams. So I'm going to go with Burks here. Again, the Tennessee Titans offense is definitely gross, right? I don't think the Titans are going to be all that great of a team. But outside of Burks and Chig Okonkwo, they don't really have a lot of pass-catching options. So we're just going to go with Treylon Burks. Hopes he has a better season than his rookie year. Definitely didn't perform up to my liking in his rookie year. But I'm not necessarily going to throw, like, a fucking fire on the guy's corpse, right? I'm not going to just teabag him because he had a bad year in a bad offense in Tennessee, right? A lot of things went wrong in Tennessee. After Burks, we see Rashad Master, Bateman, Gabe Davis, Jahan Dotson, Cortland Sutton, Jameson Williams, Brandon Cooks, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jacoby Myers, Rondale Moore, Quentin Johnston, Darnell, here comes the Mooney, Alexander Madison, Michael Thomas, Elijah Moore. Now, I have been someone who has talked up Alexander Madison because it seems like Dalvin Cook's going to be gone. But the more you read through the tea leaves, it seems like maybe Cook doesn't want to test things. Maybe he's just going to sign back with the that role he has in Minnesota. Just get the money, keep the money, and don't test things, right? Don't pull a fucking Le'Veon Bell. Try and leave, get the bag, and then you're out of the NFL in a couple of years. I don't know how many podcasts you guys listen to. Obviously, you listen to me on YouTube, but Le'Veon Bell was on a podcast, a Barstool podcast. I don't remember the name of it, but a clip was on Twitter. It was so fucking funny. He basically said that he regrets what he did in Pittsburgh, saying he should have stayed, not went with the Jets. He kind of shit directly on the chest of Adam Gase, and then said he was playing every game high, which makes a lot of sense considering the guy is very patient behind the line because he doesn't give a shit. He was high. He was just chilling back there. I think that's very funny with when push comes to shove. And also, James Conner here, big benefactor of that Le'Veon Bell leaving. If you guys remember that, Le'Veon's on the jet skis. James Conner is running for a zillion yards behind that Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. So we're back up again. The wide receivers, Zay Jones, Allen Lazard, Nico Collins, Tyler Boyd, Adam Thielen, Donovan Peoples-Jones. The wide receivers here are gross. So I'm going to go with Javonte Williams. Even though I don't love Javonte Williams, I kind of shit on him a little bit. The skill, in terms of just pure skill, he is the most skilled running back available by far. Again, I don't love this Denver offense. And I don't even love having just 4 wide receivers through 10 picks due to the fact that this is a 3 wide receiver league. But I can still play James Conner or Williams in the flex. And if Williams is the guy over Samaje Perine, which I think he will be, but Perine might get a decent role, I think you're just being dumb, if I'm being honest with you, if you don't take Javonte Williams in that spot. After Javonte Williams, Allen Lazard, James Cook, Alvin Kamara, Zay Flowers. I am fading Alvin Kamara like my life depends on it at this moment. I'm just so nervous about the suspension that could be coming. Looking at the board here, Zay Jones, Nico Collins, Tyler Boyd, Adam Thielen. I think there are still some solid values at the wide receiver position. Again, quarterback, tight end. We already got our guys. I love Darren Wall in the 11th round, Evan Ingram in the 11th round, Dalton Schultz late. There's a lot of tight ends that I like late. But obviously, in a vacuum, Mark Andrews is so much better than those guys. And at least when I draft Mark Andrews, I just know Andrews is going to be good. Like, there's a chance Waller just fucking is a flaming hot turd in New York, right? Kenny Golladay 2.0, right? Zay Jones, I don't really like Zay Jones that much. He's the third receiver on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I get the argument for him, right? The Jaguars offense is really good. But Nico Collins might be the wide receiver 1 on the Texans. I know the Texans offense, comparatively to the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're just significantly worse. The quarterback is going to be worse. Obviously, C.J. Stroud in his rookie year compared to Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence really took a step up in 2022. Doug the Pug Peterson as the head coach of the team. But I'm going with Nico Collins. 9-inch Nico Collins. I need a nickname for him, though, because we already got 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, so he can't be 9-inch Nico Collins. But if he has a big year, maybe we'll call him that as well. Or if he has a bad year, he'll be 9-centimeter Nico, because he fucked us over. After Nico Collins, Tyler Algier, Zach Charbonnet, Samaje Perine, Khalil Herbert, Brian Robinson, Jamal with 2 A's, Williams, A.J. Dillon. The 12th opens with Darren Waller, Zay Jones, DJ Chark, baby Chark, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Tyler, yeah, Boyd, Rashad Penny, and Hunter Renfrow. Now, a good rule of thumb typically in fantasy football is in redraft, you want more running backs than wide receivers. You want to get those shots on your bench for those running backs that have that golden ticket, Willy Wonka upside, right? That crazy upside. But in the 3 wide receiver league with a flex, I think you definitely want more wide receivers than running back. We currently have 4 running backs, and we have 5 wide receivers. We're going to hop back in the wide receiver wagon here, and this range is pretty gross, obviously, but there are still some diamonds in the rough. I don't love Adam Thielen, but I get the argument for it. I was a little bit more on him, then I kind of hopped on to DJ Chark. They drafted another wide receiver, so Adam Thielen might not be the wide receiver 1. Again, this is not going to be a great offense, but they're going to have to throw, or this is not going to be a great team in Carolina, but I think they're going to be down in games, even though they have pretty decent defense. I think they're going to have to throw a lot. I think there is a good argument that Thielen just sees so many targets that he's fantasy viable. And, like, compare him to Sky Moore, right? Sky Moore didn't do shit in his rookie year. The Chiefs like to spread the ball out. Kelsey's like the true number 1. Wandale, they just draft another wide receiver in Jalen Hyatt. They have Isaiah Hodgins. Like, is Wandale the wide receiver 1 or is he the wide receiver 4, right? Romeo Doubs, they drafted another wide receiver in Jalen Reed. They have Christian Watson, Michael Gallup. They bring in another wide receiver they brought in Brandon Cooks. Like, how confident can you be in Gallup? KJ Osborne, they just bring in another wide receiver, Jordan Addison Ray in the draft. Alec Pierce, another wide receiver in the draft. Joshua Palmer, another wide receiver in the draft. Like, Adam Thielen to me is the only guy here that could be the wide receiver 1 on his team. So I'm just going to take that shot again with these late round wide receivers. We are taking that shot. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Nick, so many of your wide receivers are on bye week 7. Well, an important thing to remember is that while bye weeks matter at quarterback and tight end, don't matter at all in terms of running back, wide receiver. By week 7, your team is going to look drastically different. Waiver wire things are going to happen. Some of these guys you draft are going to get hurt. Knock on wood. We don't root for injuries. It's just a fact. Players get hurt. So when all push comes to shove in week 7, some of these wide receivers won't be on our team. One of them might not even be playing, right? Multiple of them might not even be playing. That's just kind of how things go in fantasy football. I think this is a 5 running back build, and then our last bench spot will be a wide receiver. So best running backs available, we have Gibson, Mitchell, Wilson Jr., Singletary, McKinnon, Raheem Mostert, Kenneth Gainwell, Zeke, Cordell Patterson, Chuba Hubbard, just a bunch of names. Kendre Miller, who I like a ton. The wide receivers in this range are disgusting, so we're just going to go with Antonio Gibby. Son, think he's a great steal this late in drafts. Obviously had a down year. I was pretty big on Brian Robinson being better than Antonio Gibson, and that probably would have been true had Brian Robinson not have gotten fucking shot like he was 50 Cent. But he lived, obviously. He had a decent season. I like Brian Robinson a ton, and it is impossible not to root for a guy that happens to. Impossible not to root for, and he's awesome. I like Brian Robinson a ton. But at the end of the day, I think Gibson still has a role. He's still a great pass catcher. So I'm fine drafting Gibson. Again, I don't want to obviously load up on the Washington pass catchers, but I'm fine getting a Washington running back and a wide receiver. Again, I think that is a steal at that pick. Had he not have been available, I probably would have went with wide receiver. After we went with Monsieur Antonio Gibson, we see Kirko Chains, Kirk Cousins, Dalton Schultz, Chig Akanwaku, Okonkwo, sorry. Aaron Rodgers, Tua Tagovailoa, my guy, Danny Dimes, Wan'Dale Robinson, Devin Singletary, Raheem Mostert, Elijah Mitchell, Kenneth Gainwell, Jerick McKinnon, Kendre Miller, and Ezekiel Elliott. So we're back up to pick here, and we are going to go with a wide receiver. Again, the wide receivers down here are pretty shite, if I'm being honest with you. You can literally take any of these names. There's no way I'm drafting Allen Robinson, though. Odell could be the #1 guy in Baltimore. I want to take the shot on Isaiah Hodgins, though. I think the Giants are a pretty underrated team, and I think Isaiah Hodgins is a little bit of a better wide receiver than people give him credit for. And he could be the #1 guy on that team. Now we move to kicker and defense. We're going to go with kicker. First, we're going to get Justin Tucker, the fucker. And then for defense, you want to follow this one strategy, tried and true strategy that I use every single year. It is to draft the defense playing up against the worst offense in week #1 that you can find. So we're just going to do it right here. We're going to click on every single defense and then see who they're playing against. Detroit for Kansas City, Thursday Night Football. I don't love that. I don't love that. We got the Bengals against the Browns. I think that should be pretty decent, but the Saints I love. The Saints against the Titans. Bada bing, bada boom. Step inside the room. We got an A+, 97 out of 100. Now, again, I want to make this very known. Your draft grade you get from NFL, ESPN, wherever you do your mock drafts, the grade might be bad. Don't worry about it. My grade was great. I thought I had a great team, but that doesn't affect my decision making because the reason why we got such a good grade is because we got steals at ADP. We got Javonte Williams behind ADP, like at a good value. Gibson at a good value, right? We found these good value picks, and that's what the draft grade is based on. You getting steals at ADP. So if you reach on a player you really like, oh my God, you took Dameon Pierce 7 picks ahead of ADP, you cocksucker. That's what they think. And then they throw you with this bad grade, right? So don't worry about that. Do not worry about your draft grade. So our team composed of Josh Allen, Christian McCaffrey, Dameon Pierce, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Mark Andrews, James Conner, Saints defense, Justin Tucker. Our bench is comprised of Treylon Burks, Javonte Williams, Nico Collins, Adam Thielen, Antonio Gibson, and Isaiah Hodgins. Let me know down below what you guys thought about the team in the comment section. I love you guys all so much. Hopefully you guys have a great Memorial Day. Thank you to all of the soldiers that have fallen. Men, women, thank you guys. Obviously, Memorial Day, very important to me. Should have probably said it off the top of the video, but thank you to everyone also who might be serving in the military now. That is very important to me. My dad was in the Air Force, so something that's very important to me. So thank you guys for watching. I love all of you guys. Hope you all have a great rest of your guys' day. Hopefully you guys had off since today's Monday. I love you guys, and as always, good boy.